In my last talk, I talked about my number one tip for romance, which was to become fascinated with your partner. So if you haven't listened to that, please do. This week, I'm talking about my number two tip for romance. And my number two tip for romance is set aside time for romance. Everything takes time, everything needs time. So if you want to have a healthy body, you need to set aside time to do it. Like set time aside to exercise, set time aside to meditate or relax, set time aside to think about what you're going to eat so you can eat well. Right? Health requires a little bit of time, some time. And it's the same with anything that we want to thrive. You know, if you have a child, you probably need to set aside time to give that child attention. Attention is very important. If you're in an intimate relationship, which is what we're talking about here today, you need to set aside time to give attention to your partner, to set time aside to even think about what you want to do. If you've listened to some of my past talks on romance, I define it as anything you do or say that uplifts the energy of your partner. So, you need to take the time to think about it. Could take seconds, could take minutes, but it takes some time. Like what can I do that would uplift my partner? And you have to take into consideration, what the partner's going through right now. Sure, what the person might need at this point in time, or not necessarily need, but want. What would make the person's heart sing now? It might be different than maybe next week or the week before, or the day before or tomorrow. But today, what could I do that could uplift my partner? I recommend, and I've done this for decades now with my clients, for people to set aside a minimum of 10 minutes a day to slow down with their partner. If you want to be romantic, you need to be able to know your partner. And that takes time to get to know your partner. It doesn't take a lot of time. I've said this to many couples that, could you imagine if it just took about 10 minutes of quality time a day to have a brilliant career? There'd be a lot more brilliant careers, but it usually takes 10 hours or something like that a day or more, depending on where people are at in their careers. But when it comes to an intimate partnership thriving, it really takes 10 quality minutes. Of course, that's a minimum, but we need to be willing to set that time aside. Now, studies show that in order for us to do things, we probably should schedule it. We need to schedule that time. Scheduled things always take precedence over unscheduled things. Scheduled activities always takes precedence over unscheduled activities. For example, when my clients make an appointment to see me, there's about 100% success. They show up. Why do they show up? Because they've set the time aside. They put it in their calendars. They put it in their phones, whatever the case may be, and they show up. There's appointments for many things. Appointments to take our kids to the dentist. Appointments to go to work and make appointments in person, on Zoom, wherever we're doing it. We make time for those appointments. So in a sense, we need to make appointments with our partner to have romantic time. And as I define romance, not only it's about uplifting your partner, but it's also about depth. It's about creating depth. It's about being interested in what's going on with our partner, not just on the surface, but deeper down. And so asking questions can be very romantic because it can create depth. It takes time to slow it down and think about, what can I ask my partner? Take time for romance. You got to take time. You make it important. You make it so important that you schedule it in on some kind of consistent basis. I always say, in terms of taking 10 minutes of quality time, that would be a daily thing. If you're going to do other kinds of things romantic, might not be every day, but you schedule it. You might even schedule 2 minutes a day to think about, wow, during these 2 minutes, let me think if, when I see my partner later, I could do something that would be uplifting, romantic. So anything that you want to do takes time, and oftentimes it means that there may be something else we're not going to do. So for example, if I value romance and I also want to watch a sports program and there would be maybe conflicting in time, I would need to choose the romance. Maybe I would miss the first quarter of a basketball game, or the first quarter of a football game, or the first few innings of a baseball game, because I've made the time and I've made an appointment with myself, and maybe even also, of course, with my partner, for slowing down, for connecting, and for romance. We need to do that. We need to make those choices. Anybody that tells us, or if you're telling yourself, I'm so busy, I don't have time for romance, think about what you make time for. Because what you make time for is what you value, and what you don't make time for is what you don't really value, until you make a different decision to make time for it. Because what you make time for, you now value. And so make time for romance, because couples need it. We need it to thrive. We don't want to just be in survival. We want to be in a thriving mode, and we need that time for romance. So that's all I want to say about tip number 2. Take the time to romance. Take the time to think about what you want to do to uplift your partner. Think about, even, I didn't say this yet, but think about what you would want from your partner to uplift you. You could always tell them that. But all this romance stuff just takes time. Not a lot of time, but consistent time. Thanks for listening. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.